Okay, so this gives us noun clause, object of the verb, thought. But imagine we have a question like this. Imagine we have a question like this, where they said, the lady entered a very big house, and they underlined a very big house, and we are asked what is the grammatical name and what is the function. Now, if you look at this question, for instance, does it agree with diagram number 1? The answer is no. Why? Diagram number 1 tells you that you must have an underlined word in a verb, and this does not have underlined word plus verb. But does it agree with diagram number 2? Yes. Diagram number 2 says verb, then underline word. So if you look at entered is what? A verb. Entered is a verb. And immediately after that verb entered, you have what? An underlined word. So that means that this underlined word is what? A noun. What will be the function? It gives you what? Objects. It gives you object of the verb. What verb is that? Entered. Entered. Gives you the object of the verb entered. Then let us go back to that underlined word. Does it contain a finite verb? Does it even contain any verb at all? The answer is no. A is not a verb. Very is not a verb. Big is not a verb. Neither is house a verb. So it doesn't contain any verb at all. So is it a phrase or a clause? Very good. A phrase. So what is a phrase? A group of words that does not contain a finite verb. Now, we have been able to look at diagram number 1 and diagram number 2, but I want us to go back to them again. Now remember, a clause is a group of words that contains a finite verb. A clause is a group of words that contains a finite verb, while a phrase is a group of words that does not contain a finite verb. A phrase is a group of words, that does not contain a finite verb. Okay? Now, remember I told us that a finite verb is a verb that can change, while a non-finite verb is a verb that cannot change. But we have been able to do something. We have been able to look at a table that can help us understand what they call finite and non-finite verbs. So there are 3 types of finite verbs. What are they? Present tense singular, present tense plural, and what? Past tense. They are called what? Finite verbs. Then present participle, past participle, and infinitives. How do you form infinitives? Infinitives are formed by to plus verb. To plus verb. So that will give you what? Non-finite verb. So even if a phrase contains a verb, ask yourself, the verb it contains, is it a finite verb? Okay? If it is not a finite verb, then it is what? A phrase. But even if it is a verb, but it's not finite, it is still what? A phrase. But if it is finite, then it is what? A clause. Okay? Now, let's go back to our diagram number 1 and 2 again. Let's refresh our memory with that diagram 1 and diagram 2. Let's go back. Okay? So with our diagram number 1 and 2, we can easily talk about noun clause and noun phrase. Okay? Diagram number 1 says that if we have an underlined group of words, they underline the group of words. Immediately after that underlined word, you have a verb in front. Will they underline the verb in front? The answer is no. No. Okay, diagram number 2 says if you have a verb first plus an underlined word, okay, it will give you noun, object of the verb. Okay, so diagram number 1 gives you noun, subject of the verb. Now, how do you know when it is a clause or a phrase if it contains a finite verb? Diagram number 2 will give you noun, object of the verb. Okay, how do you know whether it is a clause or phrase? If it contains a finite verb. So when we see our examples, okay, in diagram number 1, remember we talked about the courage to fail is very cheap. The courage to fail is very cheap. The courage to fail is very cheap. Now remember that the courage to fail is very cheap. They underline the courage to fail. The underlined word there is coming before is. Is a present tense singular. So is coming after the underlined word. So the courage to fail is a noun. Subject of the verb is. It is a noun. Subject of the verb is. Then we now ask ourselves, that courage to fail, does it contain a verb? Yes, it does. But is it a finite verb? No, because of what? To, that is very close to that fail. So it is a noun phrase. Subject of the verb is. Okay? Then we also talk about whatever we experience daily. Okay, what we experience daily are the vicious consequences of unemployment. What we experience daily are the vicious consequences of unemployment. So if we look at the underlying words, the underlying words is coming before the verb are. It's coming before the verb are. So it still agrees with your diagram number 1. So this is also what? A noun, subject of the verb are. It is a noun, subject of the verb are. But it is a clause because it contains experience. Experience is a present tense plural. Experience is a present tense plural. Okay, remember, experience will be a present tense plural. What will be the singular? Experiences. What will be the plural? Experience. What will be the past tense? Experience. What will be the present participle? Experiencing. Past participle, experience, and infinitive to experience. So experience can fall under our what? Present tense plural. So that makes it a finite verb. It makes it a finite verb. Okay? Now, watch SSC 2000. Joe thought it was a tremendous idea. They underlined it was a tremendous idea. If you look at the underlined words, it is coming after the verb thought. Look at your diagram number 2. Verb, then underline word. So it's coming after the verb thought. So just call it what? A noun. They call it object of the verb thought. It is object of the verb thought because it's coming after the verb thought. Now, is it a clause or a phrase? Remember again, it is what? A clause. How do we know it's a clause again? It contains was. Was is a past tense verb. So that makes it a clause. Then the lady entered a very big house. Entered is a verb. Entered is a verb. Immediately after the verb entered, you have what? Underlined words, which makes it a noun. Object of the verb entered. But is it a clause or a phrase? A phrase, because it does not contain any verb at all. It doesn't contain any verb at all. So I believe that with these two diagrams, we should be able to identify where something is a noun. Okay? Now, if you, in case you want to have a test, okay, you want to test if you are right, whether it is a noun or not, just ask yourself, can that thing answer the question what or who? Anything that can answer the question what or who is a noun. Can we try? Okay, let us see. Let's see this example, for instance. Okay. What? Okay. Well, if we say the lady entered a very big house, we simply say, okay, what did the lady enter? What did the lady enter? A very big house. That makes it a noun. Let's see this. Joe thought it was a tremendous idea. What did Joe think? It was a tremendous idea, so it's a noun. Let's try this one. What are the vicious consequences of unemployment? What we experience daily. So anything that can answer the question what or the question who can also be said to be a noun. Imagine if somebody asks you, what is your name? Whatever you say is a noun. Okay? Or somebody asks you, what did you do to him? You say, I slapped him. I slapped him is a noun. Who was there when you slapped him? My friends. My friends is a noun. So just know that anything that can answer the question what or who can also be called a noun. So after examining your diagram and you want to be sure, ask yourself, okay, can that thing answer the question what or who? If it can do that, then it is what? A noun. I hope that is very, very understood. Thank you very much. We'll meet in the next class.